Kim Tae-ho pressed his face against the cold metal window of the training ship. Stars filled the darkness outside, each one a tiny light in the vast space around them. He had seen this view thousands of times during his 3 years at the Galactic Naval Academy, but it still made his heart beat faster. "Tae-ho, stop looking at the pretty lights and check your instruments," said Park Jin-woo from the pilot seat next to him. Jin-woo was his roommate and best friend, but he was also the most reckless person Tae-ho knew. While Tae-ho followed every rule perfectly, Jin-woo seemed to break a new one every day. "I already checked them twice," Tae-ho replied, looking at the screen in front of him. All the numbers were exactly where they should be. Their ship was flying through the Kethver Nebula, a cloudy area of space where new pilots came to practice. Today was just another training mission, nothing special. Behind them sat Yoon Dae-yoon, their communications officer. She was quiet and smart, always thinking before she spoke. Her job was to talk to other ships and watch for any problems. So far, everything was normal. "This is boring," Jin-woo said, making their ship turn left for no reason. "When do we get to do something exciting?" "Never, if you keep flying like that," said a cold voice through their radio. It was Commander Valtharak, their instructor. He was from a planet called Altair, and his people looked like tall, thin humans with silver skin and no hair. They were known for being very logical and following rules perfectly. Tae-ho smiled. He liked Commander Valtharak because the alien teacher appreciated students who did things the right way. Unlike some of his classmates, Tae-ho had never been in trouble. His grades were always high, his uniform was always clean, and he never missed a class. "Sorry, Commander," Jin-woo said into his microphone, but Tae-ho could see him rolling his eyes. Their training mission was simple. They had to fly through the nebula, practice using their sensors, and return to base. It was the kind of easy exercise that first-year students did, but Commander Valtharak wanted to make sure they remembered the basics. "Remember," the commander's voice came through their speakers, "you are here to observe and learn. Do not touch anything you do not recognize. Do not approach any unknown objects. If you see something unusual, you report it immediately and wait for instructions." Tae-ho nodded, even though the commander could not see him. These were the same rules they had learned on their first day at the academy. Never act without permission. Never take risks. Always follow the chain of command. The academy was home to students from 12 different species. Humans made up about 30% of the students, but they had a reputation for being unpredictable. The other species, like the logical Altarians, the careful Zentrans, and the methodical Corellians, sometimes complained that humans acted before they thought. Tae-ho was proud that he was different from other humans. His instructors often used him as an example of what a good student should be like. Captain Lee So-min, the human officer who supervised all the Academy's training missions, had told him many times that he had the potential to become a great officer. "Contact ahead," Dune said suddenly, her voice sharp with attention. "Something big, about 2 kilometers away." Tae-ho immediately turned to his sensor screen. A large object appeared on the display, shaped like a long cylinder with strange curves along its sides. It was definitely not natural. Someone had built it. "What kind of ship is that?" Jin-woo asked, slowing their speed. Tae-ho studied the readings carefully. The ship's design was unlike anything in the Coalition database. Its metal was a dark purple color, and strange symbols covered its surface. Most importantly, it was not sending out any signals. "It looks like a Vorth ship," Dae-yoon said quietly. The Vorth Empire was one of the few groups that refused to join the Galactic Coalition. They lived in their own territory and did not like visitors. Most species in the galaxy thought the Vorth were dangerous and unfriendly. They had fought several small wars with the Coalition over the years. "Commander," Tae-ho spoke into his radio, "we have found an unknown vessel. It appears to be of Vorth origin." "Understood," came the reply. "Maintain distance and do not approach. I am sending your sensor data to headquarters now. A specialist team will handle this." That should have been the end of it. Tae-ho should have been satisfied that he had followed procedure perfectly. But something on his sensor screen caught his attention. Deep inside the Vorth ship, his instruments detected something that made his chest tight with worry. "Yeah," he said softly, "look at these bioscanner readings." She leaned over to see his screen. Her face went pale. "Those are life signs. 3 of them," Taeho confirmed. "And they're getting weaker." Jinwoo looked back at them. "So?" "It's a Vorth ship. Let them handle their own problems." But Taeho kept staring at the readings. 2 of the life signs were large, probably adult Vorth. The third one was much smaller. Based on the size, it had to be a child. "The specialist team won't get here for at least 6 hours, Daeun said, understanding what Taeho was thinking. Those life signs might not last that long. "Not our problem," Jinwoo said firmly. "You heard the commander. We stay away from unknown ships, especially Vorth ones." Taeho knew Jinwoo was right. The rules were clear. First contact with unknown species required special training and authorization. Approaching a Vorth ship without permission could cause a diplomatic incident. It could even start a war, but the small life sign on his screen was getting weaker. He thought about all the classes he had taken about different species in the galaxy. The Vorth might be unfriendly to outsiders, but they were still living beings. They had families and children, just like humans did. And right now, somewhere inside that dark ship, a child was dying. "We have to help them," Taeho said. "Are you crazy?" Jinwoo turned around completely. "That's a direct violation of about 15 different regulations. Commander Veltharok will throw us out of the academy." "The child might die," Taeho replied. "That's not our responsibility," Daeun said. But her voice was uncertain. Taeho looked at his friends, then at the sensor readings, then at the dark ship floating in space ahead of them. 3 years of perfect grades, 3 years of following every rule, 3 years of being the model student. His instructors trusted him because he never caused trouble, but none of that mattered when a child was dying. "I'm sorry," he said, and reached for the flight controls. "Taeho, don't," Yoon warned. "Commander Veltharok will kill us," Jinwoo said. Taeho's hands moved across the control panel, overriding Jinwoo's commands and pointing their ship toward the Vorth vessel. On his screen, the small life sign flickered weakly, like a candle in the wind. "Some things are more important than rules," he said. As their ship moved closer to the mysterious Vorth vessel, Taeho felt something change inside him. For the first time in his life, he was about to break the rules. And somehow, it felt like the most right thing he had ever done. The perfect student was about to make his first imperfect choice. He had no idea that this single decision would soon set the entire galaxy on fire. The Vorth ship looked even stranger up close. Its dark purple metal had patterns that seemed to move when Taeho looked at them directly. Strange lights blinked along its surface in no pattern he could understand. The ship was about 3 times larger than their training vessel, with curved sections that reminded him of some kind of sea creature. "This is a really bad idea," Jinwoo muttered as he carefully brought their ship close to what looked like a docking port. "The life signs are definitely getting weaker," Daeun reported from her station. "Whatever's wrong with them, we don't have much time." Taeho's radio crackled to life. "Cadet Kim, report your status immediately." Commander Veltharok's voice was cold with anger. "We are attempting a rescue, Commander," Taeho replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "You are ordered to return to your patrol route immediately. Do not board that vessel, sir. There are dying people inside." "That is not your concern, Cadet. Return now or face immediate disciplinary action." Taeho turned off his radio. Jinwoo and Daeun stared at him in shock. Ignoring a direct order from a superior officer was one of the most serious crimes a cadet could commit. "You just ended your career?" Jinwoo said softly. "Maybe," Taeho replied, putting on his spacesuit, "but I can live with that." "I can't live with letting a child die when I could have helped." The docking process was difficult because Vorth technology was so different from Coalition systems. It took Jinwoo several tries to connect their ship properly to the alien vessel. When the connection finally held, a green light appeared on their control panel. "Atmosphere inside the ship is breathable," Daeun reported. "But there's something wrong with the air? The computer detects some kind of contamination." Taeho checked his suit's filters. They should protect him from most toxins. I'm going in. Not alone, Diane said, starting to put on her own suit. If we're going to get in trouble, we might as well get in trouble together. Jinwoo sighed and reached for his helmet. Someone has to make sure you two don't get yourselves killed. The airlock between their ship and the Vorth vessel opened with a sound like escaping steam. The corridor beyond was dark except for emergency lights that cast strange shadows on the walls. The air smelled wrong, sweet, and metallic, like flowers. Mixed with blood, Taeho led the way, following his scanner toward the life signs. The ship's design was confusing, with passages that curved in unexpected directions and rooms that seemed to serve no obvious purpose. The walls were covered with symbols that looked like a combination of writing and art. "This place gives me chills," Jinwoo whispered. They found the first Vorth in what looked like a control room. The alien was lying on the floor next to a complex control panel. It was tall and thin, with gray skin and long arms that ended in hands with 6 fingers. Its face was humanoid, but with larger eyes and no nose, just small slits where a nose should be. The Vorth was still breathing, but barely. Its skin had a greenish tint that Taeho's medical scanner said was not normal. "Poison," Diyun said, reading her own scanner. "Something in the ship's air system is killing them slowly." They found the second adult Vorth in a nearby room, in the same condition. Both aliens were unconscious and growing weaker by the minute. Taeho's scanner showed that the poison was attacking their nervous systems. The third life sign led them deeper into the ship, to a small room that might have been living quarters. There, curled up in what looked like a bed, was a young Vorth. It was much smaller than the adults, with lighter gray skin and bigger eyes. The child was awake but very weak, looking at them with fear and confusion. "It's okay," Taeho said softly, even though he knew the child could not understand him. "We're here to help." The young Vorth made a sound like whistling mixed with clicking. Its voice was high and musical, nothing like human speech. But the fear in its large eyes was something any species could understand. Yoon ran her scanner over the child. Same poison, but it's not as advanced. Being smaller might have helped somehow. Taeho looked around the room and noticed something important. Unlike the rest of the ship, this room had its own air recycling system. The child had been protected from the worst of the contamination. "We need to get them medical help," he said. "All of them? How?" Jinwoo asked. "Our ship doesn't have medical facilities for aliens. And even if it did, we don't know anything about Vorth biology." As if to answer his question, the ship's emergency system suddenly activated. Lights began flashing, and a loud alarm filled the air. The sound was different from human alarms, more like music than noise, but urgent and frightening. "What's happening?" Dayan shouted over the noise. Taeho ran back to the control room where they had found the first adult Vorth. The alien was still unconscious, but his hand had fallen across one of the control panels. Apparently, his movement had triggered something. Symbols flashed across several screens, too fast for Taeho to read even if he could understand them. But he did not need to read Vorth writing to understand what was happening. The ship was sending out a distress signal. "We need to leave," Jinwoo said urgently. "Right now." "Not without them," Taeho replied, kneeling next to the young Vorth. The child was too weak to resist as he carefully picked it up. It weighed less than he expected, and its skin felt cool through his gloves. "Taeho, if that signal reaches Vorth space, they'll think we attacked this ship," Yoon said. "They'll send warships. Then we better hurry." Getting the 3 Vorth back to their ship was not easy. The adults were unconscious and heavy, and they had to be careful not to hurt them. The child stayed awake but quiet, its large eyes watching everything they did. By the time they got all 3 aliens into their ship's small medical bay, Taeho's radio was buzzing with angry messages from not just Commander Veltharok, but also Captain Lee So-min and several other officers. He ignored them all. "Life support systems activated for non-human biology," Diane reported. "The computer is doing its best to keep them stable, but it's not designed for this." The young Vorth child sat up on one of the medical beds, looking around with curiosity. Instead of fear now, it seemed to understand that they were trying to help. When it looked at Taeho, it made that musical whistling sound again, but softer this time. I think it's saying thank you, Jinwoo said. Taeho smiled at the child and nodded. Even though they came from different worlds and spoke different languages, some things were universal, like the need to help others in trouble, but their radio suddenly came alive with a new voice, one that made all three cadets freeze with terror. This is Admiral Choi Byung-ho of the Coalition Fleet Command. Cadet Kim Tae-ho, you are under arrest for violation of first contact protocols, insubordination, and potentially causing an act of war. You will return to base immediately and surrender yourself for court-martial. Through the window, Tae-ho could see other ships approaching their position. Coalition patrol vessels, moving fast and with their weapons powered up. Behind them, much further away but getting closer, were ships with a different design, dark and curved. Like the one they had just left, Vorth warships, the distress signal had reached both sides, and now everyone was coming to see what had happened. Tae-ho looked at the young Vorth child, who was watching him with those large, trusting eyes. He had saved 3 lives, but in doing so, he might have just started a war. The coalition ships reached them first. Admiral Choi Byung-ho's flagship was massive, with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Tae-ho had never seen the admiral in person, but everyone at the academy knew his reputation. He was strict, intelligent, and had no patience for cadets who caused trouble. Cadet Kim, you will transfer your prisoners to our ship immediately, the admiral's voice boomed through their radio. They're not prisoners, sir, Tae-ho replied. They're refugees. They need medical help. You are in no position to make demands, Cadet. You have violated so many regulations that I've lost count. Transfer the aliens now. Tae-ho looked at the young Vorth child, who was still sitting on the medical bed. The alien child seemed to sense that something was wrong. Its large eyes moved from Tae-ho to the radio, as if it could understand the angry tone even without knowing the words. Sir, these people were dying, Tae-ho said. I couldn't just leave them. Your feelings are not relevant, Cadet. You have potentially started a war between the Coalition and the Vorth Empire. Do you understand the gravity of your actions? Before Tae-ho could answer, Daeun spoke up from her communications station. Sir, I'm detecting multiple Vorsvips approaching. They'll be here in less than 10 minutes. Through the window, Tae-ho could see the dark shapes of alien vessels moving through space toward them. The Vorth ships looked like giant sea creatures, swimming through the stars, all curves and flowing lines. But he knew they carried enough weapons to destroy entire cities. Admiral, Captain Lee So-min's voice came through on a different channel. Request permission to speak with my cadet. Granted, Captain, but make it quick. The channel switched, and suddenly Tae-ho was talking to his favorite instructor. Captain. Lee had always been kind to him, treating him more like a son than a student. She was one of the few officers who really understood humans and their sometimes emotional decision-making. Tae-ho, she said softly, what were you thinking? I was thinking about saving lives, Captain. I know. And part of me is proud of you for that. But you've put us all in an impossible situation. The Vorth think we attacked their ship. They're coming here ready for battle. Can't we explain what really happened? The Vorth don't trust us enough to listen to explanations. They see a coalition. Cadet with 3 of their people aboard his ship, and they assume the worst. On his sensor screen, Tae-ho could see more ships arriving. Coalition reinforcements were coming from 3 different directions, and the Vorth fleet was growing larger as well. What had started as a simple rescue was turning into a major military confrontation. Captain, Daeun said urgently, I'm picking up communications between the Vorth ships. My computer can't translate most of it, but it's definitely military. Coordination. They're preparing for battle. The young Vorth child suddenly stood up on the medical bed and began making urgent whistling sounds. It pointed at the radio, then at itself, then at the approaching ships. Its meaning was clear. It wanted to talk to its own people. The child wants to communicate with the Vorth ships, Tae-ho told Captain Lee. Absolutely not, Admiral Choi's voice cut in. He had been listening to their conversation. We cannot allow an alien to use our communication systems. It could be sending intelligence about our defenses. Sir, it's just a child, Teho protested. It's a Vorth child, and we know nothing about their capabilities or intentions. The situation was getting worse by the minute. Both fleets were now in weapons range, and Teho could see energy readings spike on his instruments as ships charged their weapon systems. Somewhere in the middle of it all, his small training vessel carried the only 3 Vorth who might be able to prevent a war, but the 2 adult Vorth were still unconscious from the poison, and no one would let the child speak to its own people. Admiral, Captain Lee said, I have an idea. What if we let the child make a brief transmission, just long enough to explain that we rescued them, not captured them? Too risky, Captain? We don't know what it might say. Sir, with respect, we're already in the middle of a potential war. What do we have to lose? Teho watched the child, who was becoming more agitated as the Vorth ships came closer. It was making sounds that were almost like crying, though alien tears looked different from human ones. Please, Admiral, Teho said, let me try something. You're already facing court-martial, Cadet. Don't make things worse. But Teho was no longer thinking about his career or the consequences of his actions. He was thinking about the frightened child in front of him and the 2 fleets that were about to start shooting at each other because of a misunderstanding. He moved to the communications panel and began adjusting the settings. Dayun saw what he was doing and shook her head. Teho, don't. You'll only make the Admiral angrier. I can't make things much worse than they already are. He opened a channel to the Vorth fleet and gestured for the child to come closer. The young alien understood immediately and began speaking in its musical language. Its voice was high and urgent, and even though Teho could not understand the words, he could hear the emotion in them. Cadet Kim, Admiral Troy's voice was furious. Shut down that transmission immediately. But something was happening on the Vorth ships. Their energy readings were changing, and their aggressive formation was starting to break apart. The child's words were having an effect. One of the adult Vorth in the medical bay suddenly woke up. It was weak and confused, but when it heard the child's voice, its large eyes focused on the radio. It began speaking as well, its voice deeper, but with the same musical quality. The adults are awake, Jinwoo reported. And they're talking to their ships. Captain Lee's voice came through the radio, excited. Admiral, the Vorth fleet is standing down? They're moving to a safe distance. The crisis was not over, but at least no one was about to start shooting. The child had somehow convinced its people that the humans were friends, not enemies, but Teho's relief was short-lived. Admiral Choi's next words made his heart sink. All ships maintain positions. Cadet Kim, you will report to my flagship immediately. You are under arrest for insubordination, violation of first contact protocols, and endangering galactic security. As Coalition security officers prepared to board his ship and take him into custody, Teho looked at the 3 Vorth he had saved. The child was still weak but alive. The adults were conscious and talking quietly with their fleet commanders. He had prevented a war, but he had also destroyed his own future. In a few minutes he would be in a military prison, facing charges that could keep him locked up for years. The young Vorth child looked at him and made that soft whistling sound again. This time, Teho was sure it was saying thank you. Whatever happened to him next, at least he knew he had done the right thing, even if the right thing was going to cost him everything. The military prison aboard Admiral Troy's flagship was not like the jails Teho had seen in movies. It was clean and bright, with a comfortable bed and even a small desk. But the door was locked and guards stood outside. He was definitely a prisoner. For 3 days, he sat alone in his cell, thinking about what had happened. Guards brought him food and allowed him short exercise periods, but no one would tell him anything about the investigation or when his trial would begin. On the 4th day, Captain Lee So-min came to visit him. "How are you holding up?" she asked, sitting across from him at the small table. "I've been better," Teho replied. "How are the Vorth? Are they okay?" "They're alive, thanks to you. The poison in their ship systems would have killed them within hours if you hadn't intervened." That made Teho feel a little better, At least his decision had been worth something. What kind of poison was it? He asked. Captain Lee's expression became serious. That's actually why I'm here. Dr. Lim Haijin, our chief medical officer, has been studying the contamination from the Vorth ship. What she found is ... disturbing. She activated a small display device on the table. Images appeared showing microscopic organisms that looked like tiny machines mixed with living cells. This isn't a natural poison, Captain Lee explained. It's artificial. Someone designed this weapon specifically to kill Vorth biology? But here's the scary part. Dr. Lim thinks it can be modified to affect other species too. Taeho stared at the images. Someone was trying to kill those Vorth on purpose? More than that. Based on what we've learned from the survivors, their ship was carrying important information about similar attacks on other Vorth vessels. Someone is systematically targeting them with biological weapons. But who would do that? And why? Captain Lee turned off the display. That's what we're trying to figure out. The adult Vorth have been very helpful once they understood we saved them instead of attacking them. They've shared intelligence about other incidents across their territory. She paused and looked directly at Taeho. The child you saved, its name is Korthmil, has been asking about you every day. It seems to have formed an attachment to you. Are they okay? Physically, yes. Emotionally, it's been through a traumatic experience. Losing its parents and nearly dying would be hard for any child, regardless of species. Taeho felt his chest tighten. Its parents died? The two adults were not its parents. They were scientists studying the bioweapon attacks. Korthmil's family was killed in an earlier incident. The scientists were taking the child to safety when their ship was contaminated. The weight of what he had learned settled on Taeho's shoulders. He had not just saved 3 random aliens. He had saved a research team carrying crucial information about a biological weapon, and an orphan child who had already lost everything. Captain, what's going to happen to me? That depends. Admiral Choi is furious about your breach of protocol, but he's also practical. The intelligence we've gained from the Vorth has revealed a much bigger threat than anyone realized. She leaned forward. There's something else. Intelligence Officer Nam Yuri has been analyzing the bioweapon data. She thinks the attacks on Vorth ships are meant to destabilize their government and force them into conflict with the coalition. Someone wants us to fight each other? It looks that way. And if you hadn't saved those 3 Vorth, we might never have learned about it. The poison would have killed them. Their ship would have been found by coalition patrols, and the Vorth would have blamed us for their deaths. Taeho thought about this. So my breaking the rules actually prevented a war? Maybe, but there's still a lot we don't know. Dr. Lim is working with Vorth medical experts to develop countermeasures for the bioweapon. Commander Shin Woo-bin is coordinating joint patrols to protect both coalition and Vorth ships. And Nam Yuri is trying to trace the source of these attacks. Captain Lee stood up to leave. Oh, and Han Young sends his regards. Han, what's he been doing? Trying to prove that you're not the dangerous rebel everyone thinks you are. He's been gathering testimony from other cadets about your character. Even some of the alien students have spoken up for you. After she left, Taeho lay on his bed and stared at the ceiling. Everything was more complicated than he had thought. He had broken the rules to save 3 lives, but in doing so, he had uncovered a conspiracy that threatened the entire galaxy. 2 days later, his cell door opened unexpectedly. Instead of guards, Park Jin-woo and Yoon walked in, wearing civilian clothes. What are you doing here? Taeho asked, surprised. Breaking you out? Jin-woo said with a grin. What? How? Why? Ji-yoon looked nervous but determined. Captain. Lee couldn't say it officially, but she gave us some hints. There's been another bioweapon attack, this time on a coalition research station. Whoever is behind this is escalating their campaign. The Admiral is preparing a major military response, Jin-woo added. But Captain Lee thinks that's exactly what the enemy wants, a big war that destroys both the coalition and the Vorth Empire. So what does this have to do with breaking me out of prison? Korthmil has been having nightmares, Yoon explained. But it's also been remembering things. details about its family's research and about the people who killed them. The child trusts you more than anyone else. Dr. Lim thinks you might be able to help it remember something important. Taeho looked at his friends. This is crazy. If we get caught, you'll be in as much trouble as I am. We're already in trouble, Jinwoo said. They suspended us from the academy for helping you with the rescue. So we figured we might as well do something useful with our time. Besides, Yoon added, someone needs to stop whoever is using biological weapons to start wars. If the Admiral's military response is the wrong approach, then maybe it's time for someone to try the human approach. Which is, break all the rules and see what happens. As they helped him gather his few possessions, Taeho realized that his friends were right. The official investigation was moving too slowly, and the military response might make things worse. If there was a chance that the orphaned fourth child knew something that could stop the attacks, then he had to try. After all, he had already given up his career to save 3 lives. What was a little jailbreak compared to that? Okay, he said. Let's go save the galaxy. Now you're talking, Jinwoo said. But first we need to steal a ship. Stealing a ship from the Coalition's most secure facility turned out to be surprisingly easy when you had help from the inside. Captain Lee had not exactly told them how to escape, but she had mentioned that Maintenance Bay 7 would be understaffed during the night shift and that the small courier ship Swift Current needed its navigation systems tested. I can't believe we're doing this, Yoon whispered as they moved through the darkened corridors of the space station. I can't believe it's working, Jinwoo replied. Checking his stolen security badge, they found Korthmiel in the medical wing, sitting alone in a room designed for alien patients. The young Vorth looked up when they entered, and its large eyes immediately focused on Taeho. It made that musical whistling sound that meant it was happy. Hello, Korthmiel, Taeho said softly. He had been practicing the alien child's name, trying to get the pronunciation right. Dr. Lim Haijin was working late in her laboratory next door. She looked surprised but not alarmed when she saw them. Captain Lee said you might be coming, she said quietly. I have to officially object to removing a patient from medical care. But unofficially? Yoon asked. Unofficially, this child has been through horrible trauma, and you're the only person it seems to trust completely. She looked at Taeho. It's been asking for you every day. Dr. Lim handed him a small device that looked like a combination of a computer and a medical scanner. This is a universal translator. It's still experimental, but it should help you communicate with Korthmiel. The child's language is very complex. It uses musical tones to convey emotion and meaning. She paused. There's something else. The child has been drawing pictures, strange symbols and diagrams. I think they might be memories of what its family was working on before they were killed. Korthmiel stood up when it saw the translator device. It began speaking in its musical language, and the device produced words in slightly awkward but understandable English. Friend Taeho, you came back. The bright coat people said you were in trouble for helping us. I'm okay, Taeho replied, amazed that he could actually talk to the alien child. How are you feeling? Sad about family? Scared about Dark Mind people, but happy you are here. Dark Mind people? Korthmiel's expression became frightened, and its musical voice took on urgent tones. The ones who made the death air. They have thoughts like empty space, cold, no-feeling music. Dr. Lim looked at Taeho meaningfully. It's been trying to tell us about the attackers, but we couldn't understand most of what it was saying. Can you tell me about the Dark Mind people? Taeho asked the child gently. They came to our home ship in vessels that look like dead metal. No beauty marks, no singing colors, just gray emptiness. Family was working on life protection against the death air, but Dark Minds came too fast. The translator was having trouble with some of the concepts, but Taeho was starting to understand. The attackers used ships with no decorative elements, unlike the artistic Vorth vessels, and they seemed to lack the emotional expressiveness that was important to Vorth culture. Did your family learn anything about how to stop the death air? Yes, but secret knowing was hidden in safe place before Dark Minds came. Family sent me away with knowledge keepers to protect the secret knowing. Jinwoo looked confused. What's it talking about? I think its family discovered something important about the bioweapon, Tejo said. And they hid that information somewhere safe before they were killed. Where is this safe place? He asked Korth single quotes MIEL. The child began drawing in the air with its finger, and the translator device projected a three-dimensional map. It showed a star system that Tejo didn't recognize, with several planets and a large space station. Home place of the great thinking minds, Korthmil explained, where all the smart people go to share knowledge gifts. Dr. Lim studied the star map. I think it's describing some kind of research facility, a place where scientists from different species work together. But that would be a coalition facility, Dayan said. The Vorth don't share their research with us. Maybe some of them do, Tejo suggested. Maybe there are Vorth scientists who believe in cooperation even if their government doesn't. Korthmil nodded vigorously. Family believed in friendship music. Between all thinking people, dark minds hate this. They want only war noise. The picture was becoming clearer. The bioweapon attacks were not random terrorism. They were specifically targeting Vorth who wanted peace with the coalition. Someone was trying to eliminate the moderate voices on both sides to ensure that war was the only option. We need to get to this research facility, Tejo said. If Korthmil's family hid their research there, it might contain the key to stopping the bioweapon attacks. That's going to be a problem, Jinwoo said, looking at his scanner. Security teams are searching the station. I think they noticed we're missing. Alarms began sounding throughout the medical wing. Dr. Lim quickly gathered some medical supplies and handed them to Yoon. Korthmil will need these medications, she said. And take this. She gave Tejo a small data pad. It contains everything. We've learned about the bioweapon. Maybe it will help. Come with us, Tejo said. We could use a doctor. I can't. Someone needs to stay here and keep Admiral Choi from sending the entire fleet after you. She smiled sadly. Besides, this is your mission now. You're the one the child trusts. They made their way through the maintenance corridors toward Bay 7, with Korthmil staying close to Tejo's side. The alien child was frightened by the alarms and flashing lights, but it seemed to feel safe as long as Tejo was nearby. The courier ship was exactly where Captain Lee had said it would be, fueled and ready for departure. Jinwoo quickly activated the systems while Dayun prepared the navigation computers. Where exactly are we going? Dayun asked. Korthmil looked at the star charts and pointed to a system near the edge of coalition space. There, the friendship place where smart people work together. That's the Kepler Research Station, Jinwoo said, recognizing the coordinates. It's supposed to be a secret facility where different species share technology. Not secret from Vorth family, Korthmil said. They helped build the friendship place. As their ship left the space station behind, Tejo looked back at the lights of the coalition fleet. Somewhere back there, Admiral Choi was probably very angry about their escape. Captain Lee was likely in trouble for helping them. And Commander Veltharok was probably disappointed that his best student had become a fugitive. But next to him, Korthmil was humming a soft melody that the translator said meant hope song for tomorrow. The child believed that they could find a way to stop the violence and bring peace between their peoples. Tejo hoped the child was right. Because if they were wrong, their little ship would soon be facing the Dark Mind people and their deadly bioweapons, and this time, breaking the rules might not be enough to save anyone. The Kepler Research Station was unlike anything Tejo had ever seen. Instead of the clean, military lines of coalition vessels, it looked like several different architectural styles had been mixed together. Parts of it were curved and flowing. Like Vorth design, other sections were geometric like Altarian construction, and some areas looked completely alien. Look at that, Dion said in wonder as they approached the station. It's beautiful. She was right. The station's hull was covered in patterns that seemed to tell a story. Symbols from dozens of different species worked together to create something new. It was like looking at art made by the entire galaxy. Many smart people worked together to build this, Korthmil explained through the translator. Each species gave their best gift knowledge to make it perfect. Jin Woo was studying his sensor readings. The station has defenses, but they're not targeting us. I'm getting a friendly signal. That's because this is supposed to be a place of peace, said a new voice over their radio. All visitors are welcome here, regardless of their species or their politics. The voice belonged to a human woman who introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Kim, the station's director. She agreed to let them dock, but warned them that they were not the only unexpected visitors that day. We've had some unusual activity lately, she explained as they walked through the station's corridors. Ships arriving without proper authorization, strange sensor readings from nearby systems. Some of my researchers are getting nervous. The inside of the station was even more amazing than the outside. Scientists from many different species work side by side in laboratories that look like something from a dream. Taeho saw humans working with tall silver Altarians, while small, furry Corellians operated complex machines alongside tentacled beings he didn't recognize. This place shouldn't exist, Dian whispered. I thought most species didn't trust each other enough for this kind of cooperation. Officially, we don't, Dr. Kim said with a smile. This station exists in a legal gray area. All the governments know about it, but they pretend they don't. It gives their scientists a chance to work together without political complications. Korthmiel was getting excited, pointing at various laboratories and chattering in its musical language. The translator was having trouble keeping up with all the technical terms. Family worked here, it said. In the Life Protection Laboratory, where smart people study how to keep biological systems safe from harm makers. Dr. Kim led them to a section of the station that looked more like a Vorth ship, with curved walls and artistic decorations. The laboratory inside was filled with equipment that looked both familiar and strange. Your family worked with Dr. Chun Liu, Dr. Kim explained to Korthmiel. They were developing defenses against biological weapons. Very important work, especially given recent events. A tall, thin human man emerged from behind a complex machine. He had gray hair and kind eyes, and when he saw Korthmiel, his face lit up with joy. Korthmiel, my little friend, we thought you were lost. He knelt down to the child's level. I worked with your family for 2 years. They talked about you every day. The alien child ran to him and made happy musical sounds. Dr. Chun picked up a translation device and spoke to Korthmiel in its own language, though his pronunciation was not perfect. Your family left something for you here, he told the child. They said that if anything happened to them, you would know what to do with their research. He led them to a secure storage area where a small crystalline device sat in a protected container. It looked like a piece of art, a beautiful sculpture that seemed to glow with its own light. Data storage crystal, Dr. Kim explained. Vorth technology. It can hold incredible amounts of information in a very small space. Korthmiel looked at the crystal and began speaking rapidly in its musical language. The translator struggled to keep up. Family gift contains the secret knowledge to stop the death air, but also contains terrible knowing about the dark mind. People, they are not what everyone thinks they are. What do you mean? Taeho asked. Before Korthmiel could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Dr. Kim's communicator buzzed with urgent messages. Unknown ships approaching, she announced. They're not responding to our communications, and their design doesn't match any known species. Through the laboratory windows they could see dark shapes moving toward the station. The ships were exactly as Korthmiel had described, gray, lifeless metal with no decorative elements. They looked like machines designed for one purpose, destruction. The Dark Mind people have found us, Korthmiel said, its voice full of fear. Dr. Chun quickly grabbed the data crystal and handed it to Taeho. You need to get this information to the Coalition and Vorth governments. It's the only way to stop the attacks. What about you? Yoon asked. We'll evacuate what we can and try to protect the research. But this station is not designed for battle. More alarms sounded as the attacking ships came closer. Jinwoo was already moving toward their ship. We need to leave now, he said, before they can block our escape route. But Korthmil was looking at the data crystal in Teho's hands with a strange expression. The child said something in its musical language that the translator had trouble interpreting. Important knowing must be shared correctly, it finally translated. Not just the secret knowledge, but the truth understanding about the dark mind. People, they are not new enemies. They are very old enemies wearing new faces. What does that mean? Teho asked. It means, said a cold voice behind them, that your little friend knows too much. They turned to see a figure in a dark uniform standing in the laboratory doorway. The person looked human, but something was wrong with their eyes. They were completely black, with no iris or pupil visible. You should have minded your own business, Cadet, the figure said. Now you forced us to accelerate our timeline. More figures appeared in the corridor outside, all wearing the same dark uniforms and all with the same lifeless black eyes. They moved in perfect coordination, like machines rather than living beings. The Void Collective, Dr. Chun whispered. I thought they were just a legend. Very real, the lead figure said. And very tired of watching primitive species stumble toward cooperation when they should be destroying each other. Korthmil made a sound like a cry of terror and moved closer to Teho. The child was shaking with fear, but it managed to speak. To the translator device. The Dark Mind people are not new species. They are old species that chose to become empty. They feed on war pain and death screaming. They want all thinking people to fight until none are left. The lead figure smiled, but it was not a human smile. It was cold and mechanical. The child understands. How refreshing. Most species never realize what we are until it's too late. Outside the windows, the station's defenses were trying to fight off the attacking ships, but it was clear they were losing. Explosions lit up the darkness of space as defensive platforms were destroyed one by one. You have one chance, the figure said to Teho. Give us the data crystal, and we'll let you live long enough to watch your precious coalition tear itself apart. Teho looked at the crystal in his hands, then at Korthmil's frightened face, then at his friends who were ready to fight even though they were badly outnumbered. I have a better idea, he said, and threw the crystal to Yoon. Run! The next few minutes were chaos. Dr. Chun activated emergency lockdown procedures that sealed most of the laboratory doors, giving them a few precious seconds to escape. Jin Woo grabbed a scientific laser that could be used as a weapon, while Dayun protected the data crystal and helped Korthmil move. The Void Collective agents moved like machines, but they made the mistake of thinking like machines too. They expected their targets to run toward the nearest exit, so they blocked those routes. But Teho remembered something from his academy training about unexpected thinking. This way, he said, leading them toward what looked like a dead end. A research chamber filled with experimental equipment. That's not an exit, Jinwoo protested. Exactly. That's why they won't expect it. The chamber contained a prototype teleportation device that Dr. Kim's team had been testing. It was designed to transport small objects between different parts of the station, but Dr. Chun quickly modified the settings. This is extremely dangerous, he warned. The system isn't designed for living beings. More dangerous than those things? Dayun asked, pointing toward the door where dark figures were trying to cut through the metal. Point taken, Dr. Chun. Sawed and activated the device. The world dissolved into light and energy. For a moment that felt like forever, Teho existed as pure information scattered across space. Then reality snapped back into focus, and they were standing in their ship's cargo bay. That was horrible, Jinwoo said, looking green. Let's never do that again. Korthmil was speaking rapidly in its musical language, and the translator was struggling to keep up with the child's excitement. Must escape quickly. Dark Mind people will destroy the friendship place to hide their secret knowing. Through their ship's sensors, they could see the Kepler research station under heavy attack, the beautiful structure that represented cooperation. Between species was being systematically destroyed by the gray ships of the Void Collective. We need to get this information to the authorities, Dayun said, holding up the data crystal. Which authorities? Jinwoo asked as he piloted their ship away from the battle. Admiral Choi thinks we're criminals and the Vorth probably think we're spies. Then we'll have to convince them both, Teho said. As their ship moved toward open space, Teho connected the Vorth data crystal to their computer systems. The information that appeared on the screens was both fascinating and terrifying. The research done by Korthmiel's family revealed the true nature of the bioweapon attacks. The weapons were not designed just to kill, they were designed to cause maximum fear and anger. The poison worked slowly, giving victims time to send distress signals and blame their enemies before dying. It's psychological warfare, Yoon realized. They want everyone to be afraid and angry so they'll start fighting each other. But the most shocking revelation was about the Void Collective itself. According to the data, they were not a new threat. They were an ancient species that had appeared throughout galactic history during times of peace, always working to create conflict and war. They're like a virus, Teho said, reading the historical records. Every time different species start working together, the Void Collective shows up to destroy that cooperation. Korthmiel was looking at the data with its large eyes full of sadness. Family discovered that Dark Mind people are not truly alive anymore, the child explained. They gave up their life spirit to become empty. Now they must feed on war pain and death screaming to continue existing. The data crystal also contained defense plans, ways to modify existing medical technology to protect against the bioweapons. But more importantly, it contained a list of Void Collective agents who had infiltrated both Coalition and Vorth governments. Look at this, Jinwoo said, pointing at the screen. Some of these names are high-ranking officials. They've been manipulating policy decisions for years. That explains why every attempt at peace talks has failed, Dahyun said. The Void Collective has been sabotaging them from inside both governments. Their ship's communication system suddenly activated. Admiral Choi's face appeared on the screen, and he looked angrier than Teho had ever seen him. Cadet Kim, you are ordered to surrender immediately. You have violated your arrest, stolen military property, and caused a diplomatic incident. Admiral, we have urgent information about the bioweapon attacks, Teho said quickly. I don't want to hear your excuses. Return to base now or face the consequences. Sir, the Kepler research station has been destroyed by an unknown enemy. We have data that proves the Kepler station doesn't officially exist, Cadet. Whatever you think you've discovered is irrelevant. Teho realized that the Admiral might be one of the infiltrators or at least influenced by them. The Void Collective had spent years placing their agents in positions of power. Then we'll take the information to someone who will listen, he sighed and cut the transmission. That was probably not a good idea, Jinwoo said. He's going to send ships after us. Let him try, Teho replied, but he was already thinking about their next move. They needed to find someone in authority who wasn't compromised by the Void Collective. Korthmiel suddenly perked up and began speaking excitedly. Family data shows truth speaker among the Coalition people. Captain with the name sound Lee So-min. She is not infected by Dark Mind poison. Captain Lee, Yoon said. We should contact her. She's probably in trouble for helping us escape, Jinwoo pointed out. Then she understand why we had to do it. They opened a secure channel to Captain Lee's ship. When her face appeared on the screen, she looked tired but determined. Teho, please tell me you have a good reason for turning into a fugitive. Captain, we've discovered who's really behind the bioweapon attacks. It's not the Vorth, and it's not any government, it's something called the Void Collective. He quickly explained what they had learned from the data crystal. Captain Lee listened without interruption, her expression growing more serious with each revelation. If what you're saying is true, she said finally, then we're dealing with an enemy that's been manipulating galactic politics for generations. The data proves it, Captain. We have names, locations, and evidence of their infiltration into both Coalition and Vorth command structures. Admiral Choi has ordered me to arrest you on sight, Captain Lee said. But if you're right about this threat, then following those orders would be exactly what the enemy wants. She paused for a moment, clearly struggling with a difficult decision. There's a joint coalition Vorth fleet gathering near the border, she said finally. Both sides are preparing for war based on the recent attacks. If the Void Collective's goal is to start a massive conflict, then that fleet is about to give them exactly what they want. What can we do? Teho asked. You need to get that data to both fleet commanders simultaneously. If even one side thinks the other is trying to trick them, the shooting will start. How do we contact Vorth commanders? They don't trust humans, Korthmil spoke up through the translator. Child of honored family can speak to war leaders. They will listen to truth words from family survivor. Captain Lee nodded. It's a long shot, but it might work. I'll try to create a diplomatic channel between the fleets. You'll have one chance to present your evidence before someone decides to start shooting. As they prepared to jump to the fleet's location, Teho looked at the data crystal that contained the truth about their enemy. Everything had started when he decided to save 3 lives instead of following regulations. Now that same decision might be the key to preventing a galactic war, but first, they had to survive long enough to deliver their message to 2 groups of warships that were already preparing to destroy each other. The border between Coalition and Vorth space looked like a wall of fire. Hundreds of warships from both sides faced each other across an invisible line, their weapons charged and ready. The tension was so thick that Teho could almost feel it through his ship's hull. This is insane, Jinwoo muttered as he carefully navigated between the 2 fleets. One wrong move, and we'll be in the middle of the biggest space battle in galactic history. Captain Lee had managed to arrange a brief ceasefire for diplomatic talks, but Teho could see on his sensors that ships on both sides were still targeting each other. Everyone was one trigger pull away from starting a war. Coalition fleet, this is Admiral Choi Byung-ho, came a familiar voice over the radio. The fugitive vessel approaching your position contains criminals wanted for violations of military law. Do not allow them to board any coalition ships. Vorth Warfleet, this is Battle Singer Morth Kalen, responded a musical voice from the alien side. The small ship carries those who violated the honor boundaries between our peoples. They are not welcome among the star children of Vorth. Well, that's encouraging, Dayin said sarcastically. Both sides want to arrest us. Korthmil was looking out the window at the Vorth ships, its large eyes full of sadness. The child spoke to the translator in its musical language. The war singers have forgotten that strength comes from harmony, not from shouting. They prepare to make terrible music that will echo through space forever. Captain Lee's voice came. Through on a secure channel? Teho, I've convinced both fleet commanders to allow a joint transmission, but you only have 5 minutes before they start shooting at each other. Make it count. Teho activated the communication system and found himself looking at 2 screens. On one was Admiral Choi, surrounded by coalition officers. On the other was Battle Singer Morth Kalen, a tall Vorth with intricate patterns painted on its gray skin. Admirals, Tahoe began, we have discovered the real enemy behind the bioweapon attacks. Neither of your governments is responsible for the deaths. You're being manipulated by an ancient species called the Void Collective. Lies, Admiral Choi snapped. You're a criminal trying to avoid punishment for your crimes. Truth poison from the lawbreaker, Battle Singer Morth Kalen agreed, its musical voice harsh with anger. The young human seeks to confuse the war song with false harmony. But Korthmil stepped forward, and when the Vorth commanders saw the child, their attitude changed immediately. In Vorth culture, children were considered sacred, and the testimony of an orphan child carried special weight. War singer Morth Kalen, the child said in its own language, I am Korthmil, offspring of research singer Velmiran and life protector Sekthala. I carry the final song of my family line. The battle singer's expression softened. Child of honored family, we mourned your loss. How do you come to travel with law-breaking humans? Because the friend human Teho heard my life song when it was fading, and chose to save it instead of following the rule patterns of his people. He gave up his own honor standing to preserve my existence. Teho activated the data crystal and shared its contents with both fleet commanders. The evidence was overwhelming: records of Void Collective infiltration, proof that the bioweapons were designed to cause maximum psychological impact, and most importantly, a list of compromised officials in both governments. "This is impossible," Admiral Choi said, but his voice was less certain than before. "The data shows Void Collective agents in positions of authority on both sides," Captain Lee added, appearing on screen next to the Admiral. "They've been sabotaging peace negotiations for decades." Battle singer Morth Kalin studied the information with growing alarm. "These name sounds. Some belong to high-ranking song leaders in our own war council. If this data speaks truth, then we have been dancing to enemy music without knowing it." Suddenly, new contacts appeared on everyone's sensors. Gray ships were approaching from multiple directions, the same lifeless vessels that had destroyed the Kepler research station. "Void Collective fleet incoming fast," Jinwoo reported. "Looks like they decided to stop hiding." The leading gray ship opened a communication channel, and the cold voice of a Void Collective commander filled the airwaves. "How tiresome. We had hoped you would destroy each other cleanly, but instead you choose to cooperate. No matter, we will simply have to eliminate you all ourselves and find more manageable species to manipulate. All ships, this is Admiral Choi." The coalition commander's voice was suddenly firm with purpose. "We have been deceived by an external enemy. Prepare for battle against the gray vessels." "War singers of Vorth," battle singer Morth Kalin's musical voice rang across space. "Let the death song of our true enemies harmonize with coalition battle music. Today we fight as one voice." What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. Ships that had been pointing weapons at each other moments before suddenly turned to face a common enemy. Coalition vessels with their clean, functional designs fought alongside Vorth ships with their artistic curves and flowing lines, but the Void Collective had been preparing for this confrontation for a long time. Their gray ships moved with mechanical precision, and their weapons were designed specifically to exploit the weaknesses of both Coalition and Vorth technology. "They're adapting to our tactics faster than we can change them," Captain Lee reported as explosions lit up space around them. "That's because they think like machines," Taeho realized. "They're predicting our logical responses. But what if we stop being logical?" He opened a channel to both fleets. "All ships, this is Cadet Kim Taeho. The enemy expects you to follow standard battle doctrine. Don't give them what they expect." "What are you suggesting?" Admiral Choi asked. "Be human, be Vorth, be yourselves instead of following the patterns they've studied." Korthmio understood immediately. The child began, singing in its musical language, not words but pure emotion and creativity. The song was picked up by Vorth ships and transformed into tactical coordination that no machine could predict on the Coalition side. Human captains began making decisions based on intuition rather than protocol. They took risks that no logical analysis would recommend, and somehow those risks paid off. The tide of battle began to turn. Void Collective ships, designed to fight predictable enemies, found themselves facing opponents who changed their tactics based on emotions, creativity, and the kind of irrational courage that organic life possessed, but the victory came at a terrible cost. Many ships on both sides were destroyed, and thousands of lives were lost. As the last gray vessel exploded in silent fire, the combined fleet found itself grieving together. The dead of both peoples will be remembered in the song of this day, battle singer Morth Kalin announced. "Their sacrifice harmony has shown us that former enemies can become strongest allies." Admiral Choi nodded solemnly. "This battle marks the beginning of a new era. Not just peace between our peoples, but active cooperation against threats that endanger all life in the galaxy." In the aftermath, as rescue ships searched for survivors and diplomats began negotiating formal alliance treaties, Taeho found himself called before a joint military tribunal. The charges against him were serious, but so was the evidence of what his actions had accomplished. "Cadet Kim," said the presiding judge, a stern Altarian named Commander Zeth Moran, "you have violated numerous regulations, disobeyed direct orders, and caused considerable disruption to military operations. Tejo stood at attention, ready to accept whatever punishment they decided on. However, the commander continued, your actions also prevented a galactic war, exposed a centuries-old conspiracy, and saved countless lives. After careful consideration, this tribunal finds you not guilty of all charges. Furthermore, Admiral, Troy added, you are hereby promoted to lieutenant and assigned to the new Joint Species Defense Force, which will coordinate anti-void collective operations. And, Battle Singer Morth Kalen said with something that might have been a smile, you will be granted honorary citizenship in the Vorth Empire with the title Friend to the Star Children. As the tribunal dismissed, Captain Lee approached him. With a proud expression, so, Lieutenant Kim, any regrets about breaking all those rules? Tejo looked over at Korthmel, who was happily talking with a group of young officers from both species. The child had found a new family among the crews of the Joint Fleet, and its laughter was one of the most beautiful sounds he had ever heard. No regrets, Captain, he said. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is ignore the rules and listen to your heart instead. Just remember that lesson when you're teaching the next generation of cadets, she replied. The Academy is going to need instructors who understand that real strength comes from knowing when to follow orders and when to follow your conscience. Months later, Lieutenant Kim Tae-ho stood before his first class at the expanded Galactic Naval Academy. His students included humans, Vorth, Altarians, and several other species, all learning to work together. Your first lesson, he told them, is about rules. Rules exist for good reasons. They maintain order, protect lives, and help societies function. You should learn every regulation, understand why it exists, and follow it faithfully. The students nodded, taking careful notes. But, he continued, there will come times when following the rules means ignoring something.